Now you're dealing with some content here that's controversial, dealing with crime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where do you go for inspiration or information? Have you had any interesting conversations with people?
My father was no, I'm joking, obviously.
Yeah. Actually, it's kind of a mix of creativity and things that kind of inspire us, reading about different stories. Some of our stories were inspired by, you read like an article, true stories sometimes, but also even some actors that we've worked with who have been police officers in the past or are police officers, and hearing stories that they would sometimes tell us, or even how things like how they work, how Montreal is a big port city, for example, and a lot of things happen through there. That's been a big inspiration, I think.
Yeah, and then a lot of times you like, for example, for this content, we originally wanted to make a movie about just a movie that takes place over the course of one day, two actors in a car, road movie type of thing, and we were looking for stories, trying to come up with stories to write that, and then one thing kind of leads to another, especially when you start doing research. All right, what if this happens? They're driving a city and then this kills the driver kills somebody, or blah 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 blah, and then you start reading upon actual events that may have happened, cases. And then you find a story that holy, we wanted to make it a road movie, and it kind of turned into this crime drama and develops, and it kind of takes on from there.
It's always so fascinating how sometimes a story can get away from you.
Right? Yeah, 100%.
Whereas it's you think you're writing the story, but then as you go, you're oh, this is a different story.
I know.
That's probably the best way to do it too, I think, is when you're restricted and you're trying to make it fit a certain mold. I don't know, it just doesn't come out as good as when inspiration takes hold and you go off in a totally different direction. Usually I find myself excited about that when that happens.
Yeah.
How did you guys start working together?
That's a funny story. Actually, I was shooting my first film, and it was about a Persian, an immigrant coming from Iran as an exchange student in Toronto, and we needed someone who could speak Farsi really well, but it had to be a certain age range, but could also speak English. And I thought, okay, how are we going to find specific? This was a few years ago too, so it was a little bit harder to cast. And Reza went shopping, he said, with his friend to buy a toothbrush, and he had actually come to Canada to be an actor. Yeah. And someone told him there's a movie basically looking for him, straight out a description of him. And I always wonder how many times must that happen with such a specific movie. I mean, in Toronto, a film about a Persian guy coming over. So it's kind of fate, really.
Yeah, and then we met. I went auditioned, and then sort of got the part. We did that movie together, but we always kept in touch. We had a great time on set together, and we always had very similar mindset, talked about the same type of movies, same kind of personality and stuff like that. And that kind of formed a friendship, and we went from there, and then started doing little projects from then on. He did a couple of short films that I acted in. Then I was interested in getting into producing and stuff like that, and writing. So we started developing content together from there.
What is, and this can be each of you answer, but what is a show or a series that you watched and went, oh man, I wish I made this?
Well, there's a couple of series, but the one that I'm watching right now that I don't look at it and say I wish I made it. I'm just really amazed by it. Is Billions with Paul Giamatti and Damian Lewis. When I watch that show, it's just the writing and the characters are so smart, and it's just like a constant chess game, and every move they make is calculated, and it's kind of like House of Cards in that way, but even better, I think, in terms of the writing and the performances. So I do look at that, and it helps me to at least say, okay, I got to keep pushing the bar and maybe get to that level, but I'd like to, to up my game,
Yeah. For me, it's this Italian series on Netflix called Subura.
Subura,
Blood on Rome.
Show,
It's a great crime drama show about a crime family in Rome. Involves politics, religion, and all the good stuff that we like.
Yeah.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
gritty, very, very interesting.
It's cool because it's
Yeah.
about like 3 different families and how the kids are upset with the way their families run everything, and so
Yeah.
they band together. It's really cool.
Yeah, highly
Okay.
recommend it, definitely.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Is it
yeah.
it's subtitled?
It is subtitled, yeah. It is in Italian, obviously, but it's
Mhm.
subtitled and very easy to follow.
You can
too.
watch it
Yeah.
dubbed too, I find, on Netflix, but
Yeah.
those are always terrible.
Yeah.
At least
Well,
I
that's-
think.
yeah.
Not
Yeah.
the same.
I
not
would
the same.
almost rather. Sometimes it can be hard for me a little bit with subtitles,
Yeah.
but it's one of those like you give it 10 minutes, you kind of
Yeah.
adjust,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But yeah, I find with dubbed, it's always
I know, there's something
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
It's not the
Off,
same.
yeah.
yeah.
But I
it's
also
not right.
find when they do something that's, especially in Sabura, when the content is really captivating like that, I find myself you don't even really read it that often.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You just get it. You're into the story. I
Yeah.
don't know what happens, but somehow you just start understanding what's happening. You know?
It's the atmosphere, the threat. When it's there, you get it. You don't need
Yeah,
to hear
it's
it.
kind of like,
Yeah,
oh, I
it's
can
interesting.
start understanding Italian. That's like, when did that happen?
Speaking of foreign films, are there any locales or countries you'd love to set a story and turn into a show or a movie?
Oh yeah, that is pretty cool.
Thailand for me. Yeah, I've shot a couple of stuff in Thailand. I've shot a documentary, and I'm gonna be doing a documentary series that's gonna take place in Thailand. And I've always been fascinated by the atmosphere of that place, the lights, just the people, the fabric of it. It's very interesting, and I definitely want to shoot something in Thailand, long form, perhaps like a story driven content.
Right.
Yeah.
For me, I'd have to say, like, I'm actually Turkish, so my background's Turkey. I was born there, and I'd always wanted to film something there. There's a lot of content coming from Turkey, of course. They're really big in the TV scene, actually. But I find it's a certain type of show or a certain type of movie that shows more of, more cultural kind of things, or traditional, I should say, not cultural, traditional. But there's actually like a vibrant, like their beach towns and their summer areas are really crazy, and there's beautiful locations and beaches and things like that, and I never see that represented, and I always thought it would be super cool to do even like a horror movie like there or something, so
Yeah.
Very cool. Now, the classic question that we ask on this show:
Love that.
what is your all-time favorite movie?
That's a hard one though.
I know people get mad.
Yeah, I know, because I can't, like, I'm having a hard time thinking of one because constantly 7 like pop in my head. I know. Well, that would be easy for my parents, but what would be yours, Hunt?
for me, it's kind of easy, mostly because it's not that I think it's the best film out there, but it has a special place in my heart because it's actually what inspired me. When I was 12 years old, I'm giving away my age here, but I saw Terminator 2 in the theater, and this older gentleman was telling us, come with, it was me and my friend, and he said, come with us or they're going to kick you out. And we said, nah, I'll be all right. And we sat down there, and it was the opening scene, and you see all this Skynet and, craziness go on. And I was just in love right there. I was like, this is what I'm doing with my life. I don't know exactly what capacity, but this is what I need to be doing. And then the usher came and kicked us out. So we had to come back like a week later or something.
Mhm.
Yeah. But
And find that weird old guy again.
Yeah,
You're like,
yeah,
I guess
hopefully.
we're friends.
Yeah.
For me, it would be probably, this is an old Italian film called Cinema Paradiso.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course,
That was the first film I saw when I was trying to get into, like, just my interest was really peaking in getting to the film business and like learning about film and storytelling and stuff like that. And I remember that was the first film that I watched and I cried at the end of it. And it's so, and if you watch that movie all the way to the end, it's so like, it's just like captures love for cinema, for art, for just relationship and everything. It resonated with me big time.
Yeah, that's you know what I always comment on when people answer these questions is I'm always fascinated. We have very little overlap. No one has said Terminator 2 yet. I don't think anyone said Cinema Paradiso.
Oh, really?
Really? That's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
And that's what fascinates me, and I kind of love that, is that so many people, every now and again we get one that has come up more than once, and sometimes it's shocking when it comes up more than once.
Doesn't
but-
that tell you that there's a market for everything, for every kind of storytelling?
Yes.
And
Like-
and different people take different things from
Yeah,
different movies,
yeah,
and
exactly.
so it's
There's no formula really to say that the film has to be this kind of story for it to work. You never know. You never know what kind of audience there's out there. You just gotta believe that there is out there. There are people out there that like the same thing that you do, and just the homework, the work is in trying to find them.
You know, it's amazing you say it's easier said than done,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it takes a great deal of confidence and also belief.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
It's wonderful to have that attitude.
100%. Yeah, I agree.
You know, going behind the camera, filming these things. Have you ever felt like, where do you feel you connect the best with people via filmmaking? Where do you feel like what genre is it specifically for you?
For me personally, this is Reza Sholeh speaking. For me, where I connect with people, and this is because those are the kind of stories that I'm fascinated in telling. It's always it's, in other words, if I were to simplify it, it's small stories that have they have a big event behind them. Like for instance, there's a story of a kidney transplant that took place in Iran. There's a movie that was there, that was shot there, and it's just, you say, oh, it's a kidney transplant story, but then you start watching it, you realize that, oh, this is actually a story of buying and selling kidneys, which is, by the way, legal in that country. Boom.
Wow.
That is 100% true. Yes. So there is a lot of stuff like there are things that narrative and that kind of storytelling that always fascinates me. When there is a huge twist at the end, and then you start one way and you take the audience to an entirely different direction and surprise them. I'm always fascinated by those kinds
It's
of stories.
amazing. You're right. It is a small story.
Yeah.
That really leads to a bigger fact.
Yeah.
It's super. I
Yeah.
didn't know you could.
Yeah.
Buy. There's a famous story in the news recently about a guy who sold a kidney for an iPhone.
Yeah.
No way.
That's too
That's
cheap.
and
It is.
No,
It is
sell it for
insane.
more.
It's
And
insane.
he just
Yeah.
died. He
It's-
died recently.
it's
after
insane.
Selling I guess the kidney he had wasn't good
Jesus.
enough.
Oh man.
Christ.
I
Yeah,
hope he
yeah.
enjoyed that phone.
I know, that's crazy.
I
yeah.
hope he had unlimited data.
Oh my gosh. I know.
Made it
I
worth
know.
it.
That is crazy. But yeah, I 100%, I see what you, I can see that. I can see that, and those kind of things always fascinate me.
Yeah. For me, it was always about music, really, because even
Mm.
watching films, the scenes that always really stuck with me, and that I would just think about or inspired me, was a great scene set to a great score. Is just that's amazing. Like I think that's what I try to look forward to do too. And even if I can do something, and we've had experience where a film or a series is screened and a lot of people, you get to see the reaction. It's those moments that I'm kind of always excited about.
Yeah.
The music just helps you connect with the audience, I find.
Yeah. It inspires writing too, big time. Like when you listen to a certain kind
I
of
love music. Like I think it's like a language on its own. So when you kind of combine it with everything else, with great performances, with great lighting, cinematography, just
I think when you say this, I think of Martin Scorsese and his use of the Rolling Stones.
oh, there you go.
And so many different films, and how that those montages, those scenes are really, really made very special by those iconic songs.
Yeah.
For sure, yeah. If you think about a lot of like classic scenes from from the movies, a lot of them I find, at least for myself, are tied to great scores or great songs.
Do you plan that as a director? Like when you're filming a scene, do you have a song in your head, or do you have the song before you go in there? Do you have a type of music? Like,
It's a little tricky because if you're too set on a song, what happens if you don't get the rights? For example, if you can't license it, then that's a problem. So I try to approach it with being inspired by it, but know that I might not get that song. However, I think in the future, what I do want to try to do is have the song in mind and base, because even if you see something like Baby Driver, where it's almost basically set to that song, if you can make it work, I think that's a cool thing. Like there's something extra special about that, as opposed to, well, I wanted the Stones, but instead it's this song.
Yeah. Wow. Baby Driver's a great example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also, I think, if you look at to original scores, there's a reason why I think certain composers, it doesn't happen that often that people know the composer's name, right? But there's certain composers that have created scores that are so moving. Jerry Goldsmith's Rudy.
I know.
That have elevated it to a level that it's like so
that is
moving.
Very true. You think of like when you think Inception, right away. Like personally for me, like Hans Zimmer and like the score comes to your mind, or like Batman, same thing. It's just it's such a huge part of it, and I think music is such a huge part of our daily lives that it's so hard to get away from it. You feel bad, you want to listen to certain music to calm you down. You feel good, you want to listen to music, and you want to be inspired. You also should and want it, especially when you're in the creative field. You want to be listening to a certain type of music to get inspiration, and then write, whether it's writing or even painting or other art formats. It's a huge part of our lives in general that I think, especially with filmmaking, it's an element that you cannot get away from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, people can see what you guys do by going to Therunner.ca. All 10 episodes are available now, and on some different platforms, right? Like they're Vimeo, YouTube, easily accessible.
Those are the main ones. Yeah, it's on Vimeo on demand, and then the first episode's on YouTube as well, on the channel there. And then there's links to the IMDb page and all that kind of stuff. And it's going to be playing festivals. I think the first one is in Bilbao, Spain. That's coming up soon.
Awesome.
So,
I just read a book that takes place in Bilbao, and I didn't really know anything about it before then, but then now I'm like,
Really?
I never heard of Bilbao before.
So go to the Guggenheim Fair because it sounds fascinating.
Guggenheim, that sounds like a German place.
Well, there's a bunch of Guggenheim museums around the world. There's one in New York too, but apparently there's some crazy stuff at the one in Bilbao.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I just read a Dan Brown book called The Origin, and he's not always the best, but everything he puts in the books are like real things, and he really sold me on Bilbao, Spain. And guys, you go on a trip to Therunner and the dark underbelly of drugs in Canada. A wonderful story. Aunt Reza, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so very much for having us. We had a blast.
And congratulations.
Oh,
It's a great show.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
We'll be right back. You're listening to The Breakdown, Channel 167, Canada Talks.